And I'm sitting there watching TV, waiting for Brenda to come back down so we can visit and get to know each other a little better. And out of nowhere, I hear a thunk on the wall right next to me. And I look over and I see a blow dart right past my eye.
Oh.
And I looked and I heard and I saw the kid. And sure enough, he had a homemade blowgun.
Wow.
And I just simply went, Brenda? And she goes, yes. I said, could you come down here, please? Because I realized what had just happened. Had that been off just a little bit more, I would have lost my eye.
Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, hey there. Thanks so much for joining us today and choosing to invest your time learning and growing as you lead your blended family. Now, before we hop in, would you just take a moment to share your feedback? Just scroll down to the rating and review section over on Apple Podcasts or up on Spotify and just tap the star rating that best reflects your experience with the show. We would so love to hear from you. Well, guess what? It's June 2024, and you might already be thinking about what you could be planning for Father's Day this year. Dads and stepdads, they play a critical role in every family. And most of the guys I meet genuinely want to lead well. But let's face it, we often feel the weight of responsibility, but don't always easily find the resources and the support we need. And that's why I'm super excited to connect with my friend and colleague, Gil Stuart, today. And Gil's motto is always forward. Gil spent 30 years in the property and casualty insurance business, which provided a real-world perspective to his current career as a counselor. Throughout his journey, he's raised a bunch of teens and seen them launch, as well as some crashes too. Gil is the co-author of Restored and Remarried with his wife, Brenda, which is their personal story of blending a stepfamily of 7 kids. Together, Gil and Brenda have encouraged blended family couples via TV and radio, seminars, workshops, intensive retreats, and even produced a DVD set and accompanying materials for stepfamilies to lead community groups right in their own home. Through their podcast and social media channels, Gil and Brenda offer tips, tools, and tingles to encourage and support blended family couples. Gil also produced a series called Unsung Heroes, which is an 8-part series dedicated to men being dad in the stepfamily arena. Gil's a genuine guy who integrates faith into matters his clients interact with daily so that solid mental health can be part of the counseling experience, addressing body, soul, and spirit. Gil lives with his wife, Brenda, in Brush Prairie, Washington, on a little lane called Glory Road. They have 7 kids between them who they lovingly refer to as those people and have the pleasure of feeding sugar to a few grandkids as well. Gil, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a delight to be with you, Mike.
Hey, I wonder, before we just kind of dive into some conversation, would you be willing to share maybe how long have you and Brenda been married and maybe what were the age ranges of these 7 kids when you first got married?
For sure. Brenda and I married in 2003, and so that puts us at about 21 and a few months. So 21 years and a few months.
Yeah.
When we got married, I had 4, she had 3. I had 3 sons and a daughter. She had 3 sons. So I can realistically say I have one favorite daughter, and because it's true, because she's my only one. But when we got married, the oldest kiddo was just coming up on 22, and the youngest was 10.
Wow!
And in all reality, 2 of them were launched, and 5 of them were coming and going between our place and the other parents.
Yeah.
And so in that, and now we have 10 grandkids and 1 in the wings.
Wow!
Which is kind of exciting because in this case, this will be my son's stepdaughter. So this will be a stepdaughter grandchild to us. And
Yeah.
it's exciting to engage that as well. So we'll have 11 grandkids and lots of activity with those people.
Absolutely. I suppose I was just going to kind of jokingly say, so you guys haven't really had that much going on over the last 20 years.
No, not at all. Not at all. People will say, you guys are awful busy. And we go, we don't like busy. We like being intentional.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Well, I so appreciate you coming on with me today, Gil, and talking specifically to dads and stepdads as we kind of head toward Father's Day. I wonder if we could just start from your perspective, maybe describing some of the differences between dad versus being stepdad. Like, how do you manage kind of vacillating between both? Because in your story, you have your kids and Brenda has her kids. And so you play both roles all the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the common thing is that we as dads and stepdads did not give birth to these children.
Yep, agreed.
I was not present at the birth of my stepsons. But there's the common bond, I think, as being a dad and a stepdad simultaneously, that although you may not realize it as a father, you have a lot to do with setting the tone of the environment and the place of the home being a safe place to live, to come and go, be who you are. As a father, I have a natural bond with my kids. With my stepkids, I do not have a natural bond with my kids. And that is one of the biggest differences, because therein lies, from the whole concept of attachment theory and bonding, that is something I have to earn with my stepkids that I get automatically with my biological children. But the differences as they may be are that. But the same thing that applies is, how am I going to maintain and manage that attachment and relationship with those kids? That's on me.
Yeah.
But how I bring that to the kids, that's sort of them having the opportunity to bond with me or choose not to be, because it can be peaceful or it can be hostile.
For sure. So all the way back in 2003, Gil and Brenda are walking down the aisle. From that point, how long did it take you to really figure out, oh, wait, this is very different in these relationships than it is in my bio relationships?
It was even before the day that difference was known well before we said, I do, I will, and I promise.
Yeah.
Because there were things that were transpiring that we tried to be really careful to not bring the kids in together too soon, because they had already experienced one family breaking up. They did not need another serious relationship between Brenda and I to break up before they got started. So we tried to be cautious with that. But as of the day when the I do's and the I wills were made, it was a wedding. A big difference that happened is that Brenda's dad, who did not attend her first wedding, attended ours.
Interesting.
I made a point of asking her father for her hand. And even though at the time Brenda was in her, we'll say her early 40s, her dad's response was, "What are you asking me for? She's a grown woman." And I said, "Well, I want respect." But we knew things were different from the very get-go, because in our wedding, Brenda's kids all attended. None of my kids did.
Wow.
So even from the very outset, there was uncertainty, a lack of safety, hostility, and as we refer to them as respectful as we can, the ex-spouse-in-law.
Yes.
And so we knew right out of the chute that things were going to be really difficult. And it was going to be up to us to create this family, because they are two family systems that are going to blend, or, clinically it's a step family. So that was it. And, between us, even in our relationship, kind of finally to the point of your question, we knew, we had the opportunity, and some couples don't get this, to go on a honeymoon.
Yeah.
So we got that opportunity, but as soon as we got back and the integration took place, it was literally 2 days later where we looked at each other and went, "Oh boy, what have we got ourselves into?"
Yes. And how many times, as you continue to support couples along the way, do you hear some sort of similar story?
Very often,
Yeah. Yeah.
very often. And typically, because that blending process, again, statistically and in true practice can take anywhere between 4 to 7 years, some
Hmm.
blended families never do blend, even if you're
Hmm.
maybe doing all the right things. But
Yeah.
it's that place that typically in the work that we do, and maybe what you and Kim do as well, is that people will come in looking for coaching and encouragement, usually at about that year and a half, 2 year mark, thinking, oh my goodness, the wheels are falling off the wagon, the sky is
Mm-hmm.
falling, which
Hmm.
we always look at them and go, you're right on time.
Yes. I love that. I love that. What
Yeah.
reassurance that, hey, you know what? You're not alone. And anybody listening, dads and stepdads, if you're feeling that pressure, you're not alone. Like we've
Right.
been there. My story's a little bit different. I also get to play both dad and stepdad role. However, when Kim and I first got married, I was a childless stepdad. And
Mm.
so I came in thinking I had it all figured out anyway, right? I didn't have any kids, but I sure knew how to parent this new stepkid I've got. And for me, it was a different journey because then Kim and I had two kids mutually. And so that bio dad role is very different in that situation than it is if they had pre-existed my relationship with Kim. And so there's all kinds of different combinations of what dads and stepdads experience. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always kind of interesting. Again, I think, our mutual friend Ron Deal with Family Life, had a mathematician work on an equation years ago about the differences between first time and second marriages, nuclear families, step families, whatever you want to call them. And it
Mm-hmm.
is interesting statistically that there's about 67 differences between 67 different types of step families and about 72 differences between a first time marriage and a second time marriage and even a third, which
Yeah.
is always kind of interesting because you always encounter something new.
Mm.
And in our culture now, many people go, well, we're not a family because we're not married. And I kind of stop them and go, no, unfortunately, you are a family and you are a step family. You're in denial, is what you're doing.
Yeah. That's right.
And so
It,
there are dynamics of a family system that you may not be calling it a family, but because of our marriage culture, people are not marrying, they're living together or so forth.
right.
And so the
Right.
marriage rates as they drop may be kind of a false,
Mm-hmm.
false situation because there are still family systems happening.
Yep.
And therefore, that's a really big difference as a dad is that as a stepfather and you're in that situation, a big difference is, are you really committed to this woman and these kids?
Sure.
And if you are not, those kids know it. And
Right.
your influence and your trustability, so to say, takes a really big hit.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you, and that influences. I think I heard you say it earlier. We need to create safety, and that
Yep.
whether we're dad or stepdad or whatever that role is, our part of our role is to create safety, and I hear that as emotional safety. Can you explain, like, what does that actually mean? What does it look like to create emotional safety?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The in the video series that I did called Unsung Heroes Encouragement for Dads in a Step Family, I put together videos that were shot out on premise.
Mhm.
And when we did the emotional, creating emotional safety zone segment, I open up with a 45 caliber pistol,
Mm.
something used like in a movie called Dirty Harry. I
Yep,
don't,
yep.
I'm not a big gun person, but I knew a couple of guys who did. So I open up shooting off this pistol.
Hmm.
And every time I think about it, Mike, it just sends shudders through my body because it's
Yeah,
like, this thing is scary. It's
it's
like holding a
powerful. Yeah,
cannon in your hand. Okay.
yeah,
So maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it still just causes me to just feel this incredible power.
yeah.
Your mouth as a
Mm.
father is as lethal as a gun.
45
And
caliber.
if
Yeah,
you don't handle that well, you
yeah.
are creating an unsafe emotional zone.
Mm.
And as fathers and as stepfathers, it is our job, as you said so well. This is emotional. It actually could be physical. Think
Mm,
about that kid. Think about that woman
mm,
that you call your people, those people, or your
mhm,
wife. What did they come out of? Did they
mhm,
come out of a situation to where their first biological father died? Or
mhm,
was there a divorce?
mhm.
I mean, the ability to create safety for those people and your wife now is crucial. And
Right.
if we shoot our mouth off and don't create that zone, we are doing more emotional damage than we
Mhm,
realize, just like a loaded gun.
mhm,
And so,
mhm,
I kind of open up with that place because it is us as men
mhm,
who can either shoot off our mouth because we're not regulating our own emotions
mhm.
and then making it extremely difficult for those that are trying to love and respect us.
Right, right.
Oh my goodness. And so creating this space is so important because in the blended family, those are some of the key questions going on for that kid as well as your wife. I mean, that's a whole nother dimension. But the key
Mhm.
question is this place going to be safe?
Yeah.
Can I be who I am? Can I
Mhm,
ask questions without getting my head knocked off? And
mhm.
where do I fit?
Right.
Those key questions are up to us as fathers and with our wives as well. But,
Sure.
gentlemen, we have way more influence than we give ourselves credit.
I agree. I
And
agree.
the place to be able to do that creates that safety. And back to that point, now I'm more attachable, I'm
Mm,
safer to approach.
mm,
But I
mm.
got to deal with my stuff,
Mhm,
trying to
mhm.
trying to keep this PG
Yeah,
rated.
perfect.
I
Yeah,
get
let's
pretty
do that.
passionate about this because sometimes some of the guys that I sit with in my office around step family issues, I just like to kind of take them out and just kind of throw a cold bucket of water in their face and say, "Dude, would you please wake up?" So
Yes.
create
Yeah.
safety. I could do a lot more time with this, but hopefully that gets the point across.
Yeah. Let's take a minute. If you had, if you're standing in line at the coffee shop and you happen to get into a conversation like that with another guy behind you in line, and he said, Gil, if you had to tell me just one thing to do in order to create safety, what would that one thing be?
For safety with his wife and her children.
Yes.
That was a mini family system before you showed up. And the best thing you can do is ask your wife and your stepkids
Yep.
two very simple questions. What is it that you need for me to feel safe? And how can we start?
Great.
And
I
then
love that.
shut up and listen.
I love it. What is it you need from me to feel safe? And
Uh-huh.
how do we start?
Right. And then just listen because the biggest gift we can give our wives and those young children is a grown man
Mhm.
who is self regulated,
Yeah.
mature, and engaged. Because it's
Love
not
it.
about you, dude. It
Yep.
really isn't. It's kind of
Yeah.
like what we were talking about before we got started. It is knowing how to love well.
Yes. Yeah.
And that
And
kid and that wife will feel loved well if you can offer that safe space
yeah. Yeah.
and then not
And
make it about you.
I would imagine like no matter where you are on the journey, even if somebody's listening right now and going, well, that's great, but we already started 3 years ago, and I'm realizing that maybe I haven't created safety. Hey, that's okay. You can
Yeah.
reset right now with those same exact questions. Hey, what
Yep.
can I do to create safety for you? And where do we get started? And then you
Right
got to
on.
work the plan so you can build that trust, right?
Perfectly said. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's kind of like the fat lady hasn't sang yet. The ball game ain't over until you're dead.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
When's the best time to plant a tree? 50 years
Hmm.
ago. Well, if you didn't do
Hmm.
that, when's the best time to plant a tree?
Yep.
Today.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. So we talk a lot about stepdads here. Let's think about the bio dad role as well, where sometimes you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You kind of shared that with me before. What does that mean, and how do you deal with it? Why are bio dads stuck between a rock and a hard place, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah. This was one of my favorite topics when we did the Unsung Heroes video. We
Mm.
went to a place called Depot Bay, Oregon. And if you're familiar with that part of the Oregon coast, it is the smallest harbor in the entire world. And
Mm.
there's this little, really narrow channel that goes from the bay out into the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
And what makes it so special to me is there's a lot of nostalgia there because that's where my granddad was a deep sea fisherman.
Ah.
And it is literally going between a rock and a hard place to go out into the ocean.
Mm.
And if you mess up, you're going to go into a concrete barrier or into the rocks and you're going to sink. So
Mm.
talk about a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
With
Yeah, for
all of
sure.
the current and swirling activity and undertows, kind of sounds like a step family situation
Yeah,
to me.
totally.
And so, what is the rock and a hard place that a man finds himself in the step family arena and in a remarriage? Well, the rock is his wife, and the hard place are his children,
His
his
bio kids.
biological children,
Yeah.
let alone his ex wife in law. And
Hmm.
so, the concept is one around the rock and a hard place of who am I going to show allegiance to?
Mm.
Am I going to show allegiance to my wife? Hey, we got this thing that we really need to do to stay unified. Or, hey, dad, we've always done this for so many years. What's going on?
Hmm.
Your new wife is pulling us away from you, or she's getting in the way.
Yeah.
That's when a man finds himself in a rock and a hard place. He has to choose.
Sure.
And in a lot of ways, if he doesn't choose correctly, he's going to sink or he's going to
Hmm.
crash. Okay. You get the
Hmm.
picture. And
Hmm.
so as we unpacked that, it was kind of like, well, let's see, rock and a hard place. Well, my first allegiance, and in my life, because of who I am as a human being and such, I'm going to put God first
Hmm.
because I need a lot of wisdom because there's a whole lot I don't know.
Sure.
So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, God, please give me wisdom. And then it's like, okay, the next person in line is my spouse because she's my first priority.
Mhm.
And this is where it gets really difficult because my bond is unique between a husband and a wife. Between a biological parent and a biological child, there is a much deeper bond
Mhm.
because of the parent child relationship, which
Mhm.
is actually much stronger.
Yes.
And so now I find myself in a rock and a hard place, and I'm torn between bonding and honoring that bond with my children versus my wife. So
Yeah.
again, this is those undertows. And so
Yep.
it really is for me to keep it straight, God, my wife, and my children. And then in that rock and the hard place, when I find myself there, I
Mm.
invite my wife, so to say, onto my little boat,
Mhm.
trying to
Mhm.
get out into the ocean or trying to get back into the harbor to navigate it together
Yes.
so that
Yeah.
we honor our marriage as
Mhm.
we parent. If I make an independent decision without her, then I'm going to crash into the hard place.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then my kids are going to get left behind. That in of itself is really difficult. And there's a little nuance here as a stepdad. I have that natural bond with my kids, but what happens when I start bonding in a way with my stepkids?
Right.
Well, in a way, for me, what I referred to that, Mike, was what I called reverse betrayal because
Mm.
I felt like here I'm bonding with my stepkids because I get to see them more because of the parenting plan. And I felt
Okay.
like I was betraying my own children.
Sure.
That tore me up.
I bet. I bet.
And then again, I needed to invite my wife onto my boat, so to say, so that it's
Mhm.
our boat to
Yeah.
help navigate that through. So
Yeah.
here are these bonds. That's kind of what the rock and the hard place is about.
Well, yeah, and the way you just described that dynamic with your stepkids as well, you're like between a rock and a hard place and another rock.
Yep.
there's multiple things going on. Gil, we hear, people all the time talking about, well, the first priority is my marriage. So everything is just focused on, if there's a choice to be made, I make it over here on my marriage side, and the kids just have to deal with it. And then you'll get another couple who says, well, my kids come first. And so we're going to choose the kids rather than the relationship. And often, we're kind of we're going to lean to the rock, or we're going to lean to the hard place, and we're just going to stay there. I'm just going to camp out over here.
Yeah.
What might be a different perspective or more healthy perspective?
Well, there's a little acronym that I would suggest, and it comes from the word SURF, SURF, SURF.
Okay.
And the acronym SURF goes for, the first letter is S, that's the attitude of servanthood.
Mm.
Then the U is for unity. The R is for relationship. How's the scope of the relationship? The last letter is F, and the letter F is the most important word to answer the question you just asked, and that F stands for flexibility.
Mm.
In the blended family, step family arena, you are doing a both and, not an either or.
Yes.
If you go either or, your boat is going to crash. That's why this is one of those differences. This is one of the 72 differences in the 67 different types of step families. You have to learn how to navigate that. So you might feel like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, because you are. But that's one of the differences. But, there's the concept that I learned from Ron, and you might have it years ago as well, that's referred to as middle ground.
Yeah.
Middle ground is only accessed by the husband and wife. Nobody else is allowed in middle ground, because that is the strength of the marriage. And in Brendan I's mottos, kind of goes like this: if you ain't got the marriage, you ain't got nothing. Because the marriage is the strongest bond for the step family system. But it's back to the aspect of, how's the serve? Am I serving? Are we unified? Let's check in on the relationships. But how flexible are we going to be in the give and take? Because there's a little beatitude that goes along with the word flexible. Blessed are the flexible, because they won't snap.
I love that. Yeah, for sure.
Because if I go rigid, it ain't going to go well.
Yes.
If I go, I'm camping out here, you're in for some hardship.
Yes.
You've got to be able to go to both sides of the camp, because in that middle ground position, Brenda and I are doing the very best we can to convert our biological children toward a gravitational place of safety, love, and being unified. That's our job.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's got to be in the strength of our marriage to be able to do that.
I love that. We learned a little bit about that early on as well. And yeah, I think you're right from Ron, probably that whole both and, not either or.
Yeah.
And I think about that in practical terms. And this was really interesting. I think about this idea of servanthood and unity, the first two letters of your acronym there. And, my personal story is filled with abandonment in my history.
Oh, yeah.
And so I come in as this stepdad, and what I really want is, I want that unity with my wife. And what I underneath, if I'm really gut level honest with myself, that means I get my way. You don't ever abandon me. You choose me. And she's in this rock and hard place, much like what you're talking about bio dads are. And I want her to just camp out on my rock over here. Right. But I had to learn, and it took me a little bit. I had to learn that my job was to serve.
Right.
I needed to engage in servanthood, which meant I had to put my perceived needs aside for a little while and go, well, just because we choose Annika once in a while doesn't mean I'm abandoned. Those two things are not equal. Okay.
Right.
And then I had to recognize that what unity looked like for us, especially in that, first year or 18 months, was Kim and I being in unity around, when are we going to actually make it Annika's way on simple things like, hey, if she wants to go out for pizza and I'm wanting something different, then I'm actually willing, out of unity with my wife, to say, yep, I think we'll go to pizza, even though I just had it yesterday.
Right.
And it seems like a silly little example.
No, it's not. It begins there. But as we now have adult children, the dynamics are still there, but they are even more complicated, because now we're dealing with adults, not adolescents or kids.
Yes. So sometimes I guess what your discussion there made me think about is sometimes that unity, I think we sometimes misinterpret that. It's I want my spouse to be unified with me or what I want.
Uh-huh.
But most often, because you start with servanthood, we say, no, how can I come alongside and partner with my spouse so that we can be unified in the strategy that we'll take that will keep us right in the middle and not crashing against the rock or the concrete.
Right, right. Well,
Yeah.
and that's the point too. 2 points to inject what you're saying, especially coming from abandonment or shame or our own backgrounds, what I refer to as in the complexity of how a person is put together. These are things that are issues in the basement. They're in the foundation of who the person is, what their
Yeah.
story has been like.
Yeah.
And, early on, Brenda and I would refer to those things as, oh, those are bare wires. Later,
Mm.
as I studied in my graduate studies school around counseling, I found that those things that we had classified as bare wires are what are referred to as attachment wounds. And so
Mm.
therein lies some of the foundation of who the human being is.
Right.
Um, but it's kind of like I have to attend to those. I need to be aware of those. And then the bare wire, if you touch a bare wire, you get shocked.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
so you gotta wrap those with electrical tape. Metaphorically, that's
Mm.
healing.
Right.
But it's back to this point of what you're saying around servanthood. Who are you going to follow into battle?
Mm.
Somebody who understands and listens to you, or someone who is going to demand and say it's my way or the highway? I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of a no-brainer question. You're
Yep.
going to follow the person who is aware of who you are,
Yeah.
knows your strengths and your weaknesses. You know
Mm-hmm.
that they got your back. You're going to follow them.
For sure.
But a person who is just pushing and pushing, you're not going to follow them. You're going to push back and resist. Well, good heavens, if a kid already went through something like that already, who expanded, like you were saying, experienced some things of bare wires in their formation of who they are as human beings.
Right.
Now we're talking a whole bunch more is in the room.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's why, as dads, for us to lead with a servant leadership rather than a my way versus the highway, uh,
Mm-hmm.
way bigger. And again, that's one of those differences of
Mm.
being a stepdad. You early on want to put yourself in the position of being a friend or that crazy uncle that's like, oh yeah, he's a knucklehead, but we love him.
Yes.
Versus putting yourself in a position to where you take on too much authority or
Yep.
discipline too soon.
Yes.
It's kind of one of the other segments that I did in the Unsung Heroes series that I called Too Much Too Soon.
Mm-hmm.
And as a father, I know how to deal with a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 25-year-old. Now I have to say 35 and almost
Yeah.
45 because I'm getting old. My kids like when my oldest kid turned 40, I said no more birthdays for you. But
Yeah.
it's I know how to do these things as a father, but as a stepfather, I've got to slow down because if
Right.
the relationship is not there,
Yep.
I may have the position, but I don't have the influence.
Yes.
So I've
Yes.
got to work on building that influence and that trust and that bond. And that can take years.
Yeah. And it all centers down on that emotional safety we were talking about before.
Absolutely. It builds on itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really good. Hey, tell us a little bit about what you think the short term, the midterm, and the long term benefits of intentionally bonding with a stepchild might be.
I'll use one of my stepsons. I've got three of them. They
Mm-hmm.
are all different. They all marry different young women, and it's just beautiful to see how they have all come together and the grandkids. But the short term, I won't say names because if he listens to this, he'll be incredibly embarrassed. But he'll know who it is when I tell the story.
Okay.
Brenda and I were not married yet. We were getting serious, and he, being in the position he was the protector of in their mini family system.
Yeah.
He rose to that position.
Mm.
And so I don't know if he really realized it, but I was sitting there and Brenda was getting them, so to say, put to bed. And
Mm.
at this stage in time, they're mid teens down to maybe 9, 10 years old. And I'm
Okay.
sitting there watching TV, waiting for Brenda to come back down so we can visit and get to know each other a little better. And out of nowhere, I hear a thunk on the wall right next to me. And I look over and I see a blow dart right past my eye.
Oh,
And I looked and I heard and I saw the kid, and sure enough, he had a homemade blow gun. And
wow.
I just simply went, Brenda? And she goes, yes. I said, could you come down here, please? Because I realized what had just happened. Had that been off just a little bit more, I would have lost my eye.
Wow.
And
Wow.
she came down and I said, do you see this right here? Could you speak to your son so and so to deal with this?
Mm,
Had I reacted, which
yeah.
I, as a dad, could
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
I don't know what inside of me, Michael, helped me maintain my composure because that freaked me out.
I bet.
And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, he's a kid, and that was supposed to be funny.
Yep.
But I realized he's a kid. He doesn't realize that he could have just blinded me. And
Yeah.
so I tell Brenda the situation so she can deal with it.
Yes.
That was early on.
Yep.
I always did my I can't say always, but I tried my best that anytime anything took place, I always let Brenda deal with her kids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there
Mm-hmm.
were a few times early on, shortly after we were married, that I had to bite my upper lip. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I got a callus right there on my lower lip to just go, because I knew what to do, but it's like, no, not yet. I can't do
Yep.
it. A couple
Yep.
times it leaked out because I was like, okay, I got to deal with this.
Yeah.
So those were early on. They
Yeah.
saw me have self composure and self control.
Yeah.
Had I blown my top when the
Yeah.
time had come, then I would have been a loose cannon and a loose, 45 millimeter gun. As time went on, they still had a good relationship with their biological father. But because of that self control and how I loved their mother and how they saw us have arguments and conflict, because we had healthy arguments and conflict rather than negative, because
Right.
what they saw between their mother and father was nothing at all. And then before they knew it, he was walking out the door and
Mm-hmm.
didn't know why. So those things built on each other. So by the time they're getting into their mid teens and early 20s, they start coming to me with serious issues.
Mm.
They're seeking advice.
Mm-hmm.
Now my time has come.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now how does that play out? I mean, all three of my stepsons now, they still have a conversation with their biological dad, as they should.
Sure. Right.
But I will tell you, Mike, when it comes to something really serious,
Mm.
they come to me
Yeah.
because they know that because of where I am with my faith, where I
Mm-hmm.
am with my ability as best as I can as I continue to grow,
Right.
because I'm still growing,
Yeah.
that they can count on me.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of interaction because now they're young men. They have
Right.
established their own homes.
Yeah.
But I, with my wife, got to inject influence.
Yes.
And now I'm kind of getting to be the old dude. And if there's really some sense of influence or wisdom or what did you do in this situation, they do talk to their dad, but they come to me. And one of my sons, I'll end here with this particular question. One of my sons had a huge decision to make, and Brenda and I were visiting them, and they kind of talked because it was a career decision.
Mm.
And they said, we have not talked to anybody else about this. We've been waiting to talk to you and Gil because we know that you'll keep your mouth shut and we trust you.
Mm.
What higher compliment could you have?
I love that. Yeah.
But that took 20 years.
Right.
That's the one thing I would say to dads.
Yeah.
You might be doing everything right and you might not be seeing any results. This is a long haul game.
That's right. Yeah. You're playing the long game, and it started way back when Gil decided not to freak out when he quite frankly could have lost his eye, right?
Yeah.
He's going to maintain composure, which again stems back to creating emotional safety and building trust right from the beginning, that I'm not going to inject myself into that. And the long-term impact is trust and connection. I love that, which, most of the dads and stepdads that I talk to, that's what they really want at the core anyway. They want to have a trusting relationship with their kids and their stepkids, and they want to experience genuine connection. What we want is we want it instantly. And it just is unrealistic. Yeah, it's unrealistic.
Well, right. I think the thing that's kind of funny when you think about it, as we get older and our children get older, and some of my peers are a few years ahead of me because I've learned a lot from other stepdads that have gone before me. But the one common theme that we often kind of chuckle about is as we get older and as we get to that stage of our life where we need our kids, you want to make sure that they like you.
There's a good long-term benefit, right?
Right. Don't be a dope. Don't be a jerk. Don't be contrary, because if that's the case, that's not going to go well for you when you need your kids to help you.
Yeah, and it's coming. It's coming for all of us.
It is faster than we want to admit.
That's right. That's right. What about in your relationship with Brenda? So when you see either in your own story or you think about other couples you've supported along the way, what's that short-term, midterm, and long-term benefit of doing this whole bonding thing with a stepchild well that actually impacts your relationship with your spouse?
I love that question. Let me take you to a counselor training a few years ago. And in this training, there's probably 40 or 50 people on a Zoom training around step family. And the question comes up with this very question. Mm-hmm. And I inserted, hey, here's a big motivation. The more that you can interact and bond with your stepchildren, that actually causes your wife to bond and find you more attractive. And I went so far as to say, and this will be really pleasing for the men to hear, that the more that I bond with my stepchildren genuinely, I am going to be much more satisfied sexually. And people are going, what?
What? Yeah.
And this is a national thing. And I'm in the chat room and people are going, oh, that's ridiculous. And I went, no, hold on a second. And even the monitor said, oh, that's funny. LLLLLLOOY, or LOLOL, whatever.
Right.
And then literally within moments, probably about 20 other counselors in the chat room go, no, actually, Gil's right.
Yep.
Because what's happening is that when I, in the short term, connect with those kids, the very thing that my wife wants is a father in their life, because their father bond got broken. It got bruised. It got busted. It got splintered. Yep. And if I can come in as a healthy male figure to her children, it doesn't replace their dad, but it gives them a sense of being anchored.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me now, to her, one of the sexiest men on the planet, to her.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
And I've asked a number of women in step-family situations, how does you feel about your husband when he really is connecting with your kids? And she goes, that turns me on. And I'm going, really, sister? And she goes, oh, yeah. I feel closer to my husband because he's loving my children. And in essence, he's loving me.
That's right. That's right. Because they're an extension of her. And it's an extension that you're never going to change.
Right. And you're building a bond that she already has, that because she's the mother of those children, i.e. those people.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think the short term is because we want this new relationship. Of course, we're remarrying either because of divorce or death. I mean, there's so many other issues in just marriage is marriage. But when you get into remarriage, boy, there's a lot of other wrinkles you got to contend with. And it takes a lot of intentionality. Yeah. Because you're not just marrying the woman, you're marrying everything that comes with her.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And when you handle that in a way that is trustworthy, then what's she going to do? She's going to trust you. And trust builds connection, and that's connection in every level, whether it's relational, emotional, sexual, spiritual, all of that. Yeah.
Well, and I just want to emphasize what you just said there, because you're hitting it right on the head. Trust builds safety, and it also builds unity. Those are all byproducts of trust.
Right.
In the Gottman illustration of what's called the sound house, the two main beams that hold up the whole sound house are trust and commitment. And when people come into my office, I'll show them the actual illustration of the trust and the commitment and the sound house. And, we could go into all the stuff around the Gottman Institute because it's really kind of the gold standard in so many ways.
Yeah,
But I
it's very
said,
good.
you already have commitment because you're here. If you weren't committed, you wouldn't be sitting in this office.
Right.
But basically, the trust beam is completely full of holes or eaten up by termites because of
Hmm.
you haven't been paying attention to it.
Hmm.
And by and large, they all shake their head and go, yeah, that's kind of it. I'm not so
Hmm.
sure about the commitment because I don't feel safe. I can't be
Right.
vulnerable. I don't
Right.
feel together. And I'm going, those are all byproducts of trust.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And as we build and strengthen that, we maybe even recognize, oh, my commitment was strong. I just didn't realize it because I've been teetering so precariously on this trust beam.
Well said. Well
Yeah.
said.
So our focus on connecting with these stepkids ultimately creates a connection with our wives as well. And like you said, we know there's all kinds of other pieces of marriage, but if I have a story in my head that, well, I want the wife, I don't want to have to deal with the kids, then it's not going to go well for you. like we could just, if we're going to hold on to that belief, it's not going to go well for you. In fact, an investment into those kids is an investment into your long-term connection and happiness and satisfaction and all of that in your marriage as well.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
And so all these things we've been talking about already today are simple steps to work toward. Now, simple and easy are two different things, but they are simple steps to work toward that commitment you're really looking for.
Yeah, good adjusting.
Yeah, absolutely. The flexible part, right? I
Yeah,
love your
back to the
SIRF
F.
acronym.
Back to the F
Yeah,
for flexible. Yeah.
absolutely. I love it. We've talked kind of through that lens and talked a lot about, well, I guess the assumption is we still have kids in the home or we're dealing with it on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever that looks like. What about adult kids? Like if you're
Uh,
coming into the mix and some of the kids, you said a couple of your kids were already launched when you first got married. How do you intentionally connect with and build relationship with an adult child who's already kind of out living their life?
yeah.
Sorry, an adult stepchild who's
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
out kind of living
Yeah.
their life. Yeah.
Because some of the dynamics for a step kid can be similar, whether they're 5, 15, 25, 35. Who
Sure.
is this guy? Can
Yeah.
he be trusted? Is
Mm-hmm.
he going to treat my mother well? Is he a
Mm.
jerk? Is
Mm-hmm.
he all about him? I mean, you are, there's a concept, again, this is where I would refer to as integration, which is taking a scriptural principle along with a good psychology principle, which is this: we are known and read of all men, which means don't tell me, show me. Your
Mm-hmm.
actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your actions with an adult stepchild are arrogant, off putting, aloof, they aren't going to trust you.
Sure.
And then really, truly, all you are is mom's husband. You're
Right.
not Gil. You're not Mike. You're not a person to be respected. And
Mm-hmm.
what do most men want? Respect. But as an
Right.
adult to an adult child, you
Mm-hmm.
got to earn it
Right.
because
Yep.
they're a complete stranger to you.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you treat complete strangers that you are looking for respect? You
Right.
treat them with like-minded respect. It's kind of the concept of what I like to say is you get what you give.
Right.
And if you're given a bunch of baloney, you're going to get baloney in reply.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm.
And again, it's kind of this concept. Well, he's a child and I'm the adult. I'm going baloney. You would not ask a complete stranger who's maybe in their 20s or 30s or 40s, depending upon how old you are, but you would not ask a complete stranger to stop and stop by your front yard and mow your lawn
Mm-hmm.
unless you had a relationship with them. And so
Yeah.
it's that place of going, okay, hold on a second. Yes, you may be an adult parent, but are you in that role of trying to put yourself in a position of a subordinance as an
Mm-hmm.
adult parent to an adult child?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's called positional authority. But if we move to adult, now we're in what's referred to as influential authority
Right.
based on relationship.
Yeah.
And so, based upon that, yeah, you may be the older person,
Yep.
but you might not be very mature if you take a position of my way or the highway.
Absolutely.
Honestly, if that's your position, and I would say this to the men listening to this, if you're doing that, stop it immediately. You're hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's key. You're hurting yourself.
Yeah. And to be quite frank, your sex life may not be so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Based on what we just talked about. Absolutely.
Yeah, just what we talked about. Because,
Yeah.
you anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Enough of that. It's all about the sex, right?
So what I hear you saying there, Gil, is actually it's not that complicated. The principles, whether it's a young child in the home or whether it's an adult child who's launched into their own life, the principles remain the same. We're focused on building trust and emotional safety. It might look a little different when that adult child is, over or we're in their house, but the principles remain the same.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Brenda and I just did actually a talk on this a couple of weeks ago at a conference called Blended and Blessed, and we were tasked with this very issue. And we were only given a few minutes to talk about this, and we could talk for hours because we have adult children, but we've progressed. But the opening line that we had to other step parents in step families with adult children was lower your expectations. Lower your expectations because they have lives.
Yes.
Make yourself friendly. Don't expect too much because what's going to happen is you're going to get disappointed and then you're going to go into your self-talk. And before you know it, now you've created hostility between you and that adult child. And they're going to go, I don't even know you. What's your problem?
Right. Yeah. Be careful the stories in your head, right?
Oh, I tell you, because self-talk is just, I mean, when you're statistically behind self-talk, about 70% of our self-talk is negative.
Right.
And when you really think about it, it kind of blew me away when I found out about the neurological about this, is that our self-talk moves at about 3,000 words a minute.
Wow.
And if 70% of that is negative, holy smokes, especially if that kid doesn't even know me and I'm having this conversation because, I don't like this about them and I don't like that about them. And then you go tell your wife about it and you're complaining about her kids. Well, let's see, what's that going to do with the relationship between you and your wife? They're supposed to respect me. Well, yeah, but are you being respectable?
Right. Are you someone they actually want to trust and respect? Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Man, Gil, what a great thing. I mean, I could go on and on and on and talk about this stuff as well. And I'm confident that this is bringing value to the guys that are listening and hopefully to the wives and ladies that are listening as well. Just thinking through, hey, each of us has some stuff we're going through. Regardless of which one of the partners we're talking about, each of us has some stuff we're going through. So I'm hopeful that this has brought some insight for some of the wives listening as well.
Yeah. One last point, and then I'll let you land the plane, as I call it. One of the things that I would really encourage the wives to do, and this sounds kind of strange because I did the unsung heroes for dads.
Right.
And the videos are all short. I don't think any of them are any longer than maybe 10 or 12 minutes. And I queried a bunch of other stepfathers, so it's just not me shooting stuff off the top of my head. Yeah. But, But I've encouraged a lot of the women as well to watch the Unsung Heroes video series because there's a lot of things that the women go, oh my gosh, I didn't know my guy was dealing with that. He didn't know how to tell me that. Yeah. They got value out of it because now it's like, because sometimes us guys, not to pick on us guys any more than I have to, but sometimes we just don't know how to put stuff into words.
I agree.
And so what I've tried to do was to encourage the guys to say, here's the problem, here's some feedback, and here's some concepts and ideas to remedy the issue.
Yes.
But to allow your wife to watch it is an ability to kind of go, here's what I'm dealing with, but I didn't know how to put it into words, which then creates empathy between the two of you.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so I would really encourage, the guys to take it in, but it's really geared for the women to get some stuff out of it as well.
I so appreciate that, Gil. That's a great thought. And if that just sparked something in anybody that's listening, we will put a link straight to where you can access the Unsung Heroes video series in the podcast or in the episode notes. And so just scroll down and you can link right to it and go check it out. So appreciate that. Well, Gil, as we kind of bring it to a close today, I wonder if you just had to give dads and stepdads one piece of advice, if you only had like 45 seconds to give one piece of advice, what would that one thing be?
Well, I can put it in maybe even a short sentence. While you blend, mend. While you blend, mend.
Yeah.
You are entering into a situation where hearts are broken and hurt and are looking for mending, for healing, for repair. So while you blend, be very intentional that you're mending as well.
I love that.
You are battling for hearts.
I love that.
So if you're going to be aggressive to bend and mold, but to really help people mend.
I love that. That is such great advice, Gil. And there's so many ways that can play out, and it's unique to each man listening. And I just encourage you to have the manliness to be that person who can be trusted, who can be sensitive, who can be present, who can be a servant, and all of that. And so appreciate Gil's perspective. I know you've had to work really hard at that over the years, Gil, as have I. Yeah.
Still working at it.
That's right. That's right. Well, Gil, I bet there's some listeners thinking, man, I'd really love to kind of connect with Gil, maybe even get to know Brenda a little bit. Where can people find you?
Well, we have a little website called gilandbrenda.com. How original could you get?
How simple can it be? That's right.
How simple. And so under gilandbrenda.com, there's lots of resources and, stuff,
Absolutely.
And the unsung hero stuff is in there. And yeah, I'd love to talk to people, field questions.
Yeah.
Again, we're all in this together. It's kind of like, when we're all in unity, we can go, as I like to say, farther together and closer to the edge.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And so it's in community that happens. And so, yeah, gilandbrenda.com. And, that's the best way to get a hold of us.
Sounds great, Gil. I will make sure that we put a link to that in the show notes as well. So anybody listening, just scroll right down there and you can click right on the link. Gil, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I so appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. I know it's going to bring great value. And to all the dads and stepdads listening today in a week and a half or so, when this episode drops, happy Father's Day. Enjoy that. And really think about what might your next steps be to build that trust, to build that emotional safety, and really invest in the long-term future of your family and of your marriage. We really encourage you to do that.
Right. It's been a privilege, Mike. Thanks so much for the invitation. Really, really
absolutely enjoyed it. Privilege to have you here, Gil. Thanks so much. We're going to make this episode a wrap.
Okay.
Does it ever feel like people just don't get how tough it is to blend a family? What if you could experience a community that's all about healthy support, guidance, and practical strategies that help you thrive in your blended family? Well, now you can. Blending Together is a supportive community for blended family couples just like you.
We've educated and supported hundreds of couples navigating the unique challenges of blended family life. Now we're inviting you to join our community and experience the transformation that awaits you. Blending Together is not just another community. It's a place where you'll find practical, real-life strategies for building unity as a couple,
creating more connection as a family,
experiencing partnership in parenting,
and even dealing with that difficult ex.
Blending Together is a safe, growth-focused space where you'll get to connect with us and maybe more importantly, with other blended family couples who truly understand what you're going through. Along the way, you'll discover practical tools, guidance, and hope that empower you to find a future full of confidence and connection.
When you join Blending Together, you'll gain access to a variety of resources like our private Facebook group and online learning platform, monthly coaching meetings, monthly Q&As, and you'll even get to vote on the content for our monthly workshops.
Blending a family can often leave couples feeling alone or isolated, and quality support can sometimes be expensive and hard to find. That's why we're offering you access to all of this at a super low monthly rate. because every blended family deserves the opportunity to thrive regardless of their budget.
So scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes and click the link to join us in the Blending Together community and meet other couples just like you in our upcoming community meeting. Plus, when you join before the end of the month, you'll gain access to our brand new bonus mini course that will help you make quick headway. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We can't wait to meet you inside Blending Together. Just click the link all the way at the bottom of the show notes to get started.
We'll see you there.